I think you clicked on this video because you want to learn how to make this. Well, I think you made it to the right video. Let me show you the step by step. I got some 3/4 inch pre-finished birch from a local lumber store that I love, and here's the plan. I only need one sheet of 3/4 inch to take care of this. You can see I'm gonna cut it in half first with my Tracksaw. You could take it to the table saw if you got strength in your arms, but it's easier to just cut it down first and then clean it up at the table saw. Like I said, take it over to the table saw and get you a nice clean edge. Track saws are never 100% accurate, but you want to get that squared up and nice and perfect. So you see I'm going to take section B, take a little bit of that off to make sure it's square. Just go ahead and fast forward through this cut because that's an illegal cut, very dangerous cut. But I'm going to take section C, cut that in half. And now I'm going to jump over to section D, cut that in half as well. And now I'm going to go back to section A and cut exactly what I need. But you can see here, I'm second guessing where I need to cut. This is evidence that you need to make sure that you measure twice. Because if I would have made a messed up cut here, I would have to go get another sheet of plywood. You don't want that to happen. Make sure you double check. So I'm headed over to section B now, that I cut A to the size that I needed, precisely on the table saw. Take B over to the table saw, cut exactly what I need off of that as well. And now you have almost all the pieces you need to start your basic carcass. Now it's time to take your 3 pieces, the sides and the bottom. You're gonna add a little gap right there. Why are you gonna add that gap? It's because you're gonna slide the back end with some 1/4 inch pre-finished Baltic birch. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna teach you how to make that little rabbit. We call it a rabbit, but if you're a beginner, let's just call it a little tunnel. It's about a little over a 1/4 inch gap or tunnel. Measure up on your table saw that back piece. You want it to slide through without any friction, because that's exactly where you're gonna start your rabbit or tunnel. Right there. Here's another view. That rabbit is going to go all the way up the sides and at the bottom of the cabinet. You're going to slide that piece in once it's ready, just like so. Now this is only your first cut. You're going to make multiple cuts, so it's important that you don't move your fence after you cut your first 3. Because if you can see here, that's not big enough for your 1/4 inch plywood. You got to go back. Now take a scrap, cut it once, and then try to get that extra piece out. You want to use your scrap because you don't want to mess up or make it too big. So move it over a little bit, push the scrap through one more time, and you should be good. See, good thing you have a scrap. Move that fence over just a hair and do it again. Now look at this. Woo-wee! Notice that it's really flexible in there. You can slide it. It's not hard to push down. Trust me, I've made the mistake and made that extra tight. And after putting the cabinet all together, it was super hard to push down. But you can see now I didn't move my fence after I made that last cut. I'm taking my 3 pieces and letting it slide through. Now you might be asking, why did we leave that gap in the back? Why didn't we just, do whatever we want? you're gonna see right here. Now I'm gonna put the sides together and the bottom together, lining the channel, the tunnel, the rabbet, whatever we want to call it, lining that up. I'm gonna pin them together just to hold them while I screw it together. If you don't have this, you don't need this, that's fine. Just screw it in. Get something to hold it in and screw it in. And here's the reveal. This is why we left that space in the back for the back pieces. You may ask, Mr. Dunkwoods, why did you only do little pieces in the back? That's because you don't need to use a whole sheet of plywood in the back. This is just enough structure for you to not have to buy 2 sheets of plywood. But don't get me wrong here, you can buy 2 sheets of plywood and just put a whole sheet back there, but it's going to be pretty heavy. If you follow this method, it's not going to be too heavy and it's still going to be strong. The other question you might be thinking too is, why didn't I use pocket holes? Well, the sides aren't going to be exposed, so I don't need that. Hope that answered your question. Now this little jig is pretty cool. This is going to be for the little shelf that's going inside. You want to be able to adjust that up and down and not just be stuck because you screwed it in. So this little jig helps you do the pinholes. Super easy, super cheap. This is my favorite part right here. This is my favorite part. Taking that 1/4 inch pre-finished Baltic birch and sliding that right through the grooves we just cut. But first I need to cut this sheet down, get it to size. See, I didn't have to say anything. That was just beautiful, right? Look at that. Now you put your shelf in there and voila. But you don't want that plywood to be exposed, right? No, no, no. Get you some iron-on edge band and oh man, this is where my camera took a dump. But luckily this video I have here shows you how to do it. So since we have the basic structure built now, we're going to worry about the doors and face frame. Here is some maple. Maple is great for face framing and doors. It's very strong. Whenever putting a cabinet in a space like this, I always make it a little bit skinnier because we're going to use the face frame to cover that gap. And I also 45 the edges so it's nice and smooth when I fit it in that tight gap. I don't have to worry about the sides, only the face frame. And unfortunately that footage went with my camera. But I'll show you how to make the doors, which consist of the blue and red that you just saw, stiles and rails, and that center is MDF. Now the rails and stiles, I like to do 2 inches. 2 inches is the standard. Anything skinnier, you might run into some issues. Anything thicker will just look too bulky. So after cutting that down, you can see here I have 4 pieces. These are going to be cut down for my rails and stiles, and I'll show you how I do that right now. My stiles are going to be 34 inches. That's basically the height of the door. You can cut those in full. I have a table saw sled which makes things easier for repeat cuts, but you can use a miter saw, no worries. To get the width of my doors, I lay the stiles on the face frame, making sure that I reflect the overlay. Now what is an overlay? An overlay is where your door is going to overlay the face frame at 3/4 inch. You can buy 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 7/8. You can buy different sizes, but I bought 3/4 inch. After laying down the stiles at 3/4 inch, I want to get the middle of the face frame. That's going to tell me exactly where those doors should end, giving me the exact width that I need for the doors. Let's go. Now don't cut the exact length. leave a little bit of extra space and I'll show you why. These rails are going to be inside of the stiles. It gives it extra strength. You're going to make joints on both of these. So first take your rails and stiles over to your table saw and get you a nice scrap. You're going to need this, trust me. And what I've learned to do is take the rails and stiles and sand down the sides. Why? Why would you sand down the sides? Because they're ugly. And when you put the doors together, it's hard to sand after. So sand now. And after you sand, take your scrap piece over to your blade, set it on its side, and lower it to probably about 7/16 or a 1/2 inch. I like 1/2 inch, makes the math easier. And once you got to a 1/2 inch, take your fence and you're going to try to get the center of that board. Now you're not going to be exactly there, but just eyeball it. And once you have the center, it's time for you to cut. After that first cut, flip it over, cut it again. This automatically centers that cut. You're good. But just like when you cut the 1/4 inch gap in the back of the cabinet, you're going to have to do a couple more cuts. But that's okay. Take your real pieces now that you tested on your scrap, take it over and cut all those down. Once you're finished, take your scrap back there again and move your fence over a hair and give it another cut. Again, you're going to cut it through once, flip it over, and cut it again. You're going to make that rabbet a little bit wider. And test it on some MDF. Oof. Woo, let's go! You can do it! I hope you didn't move your fence because you are going to now take your real pieces and repeat the process. Remember I told you to make that 1/2 inch deep cut? Now this is where the math is easy. You're going to take that distance and then you're going to add a 1/2 inch on each side. And that's exactly what you're going to need to cut the width. As you can see here, the 1/2 inch gap there is what's going to be cut off and pushed into the rails. Let's show you how to make this joint. Lower your blade to exactly where that ledge starts. What you're going to do is cut that off. I like to first cut exactly where that mark should end and then just freehand the rest. If you didn't get it with that speed motion, here it is in regular motion. You can see here that I added some glue to that joint, and it should slide in and be nice and snug. And look at that joint. What I like to do is I like to do the bottom piece first, then clamp it up, let it dry, and the next step is my favorite. Like I mentioned before, I used 1/4 inch MDF for the center of this door. And look how smoothly it slides down those grooves you created. Here's another look at that fantastic slide-in. So if you don't have this Craig hinge door hole maker, you're missing out. After a good sand, it's now time to paint. What I do is I use my Apollo HVLP, and I love to use general finish. I would show you how I paint, but that's going to be a whole new video, so stay tuned. I now attach the face frame, and I like to paint my face frame first, so I don't have to do any tape up. Lay that on there, let the glue dry, or even just hit the sides with pocket holes to make sure there's extra strength. It's a good thing you bought these hinges because these hinges control your speed. You can adjust that. You can also adjust the height, the depth, and all the above. Now you're locked and loaded. To make the top, normally people use hardwood, glue it together, but this is going to be a painted top. It's not going to be a wood top, so I'm using plywood. You saw that I measured the back of the cabinet all the way to the front of that cabinet door. I'm going to use the plywood with a miter fold in the front to make it look like a thicker piece of wood. Just a little magic trick. So I cut 45-degree angles on a sheet of plywood, and you can see I cut a small little 1.5-inch face piece that I'm going to add some glue and fold up just like so.